saying was that regardless if we are actively managing or taking ownership of our brand, we have one, right? There's a reputation that precedes you. So the idea here is that your personal brand is essentially how you're seen, how you are showing up, and in this perspective in work, and how you are perceived by others, right? It's that intersection between how you think you're showing up and how you're perceived by others. So I typically define it in these three terms. If you can answer these three questions, then you're well on your way to defining a well-crafted brand. This is who I am, this is what I do really well, and this is how I add value. So when you think about this, I want you to think in terms of what are the target roles that you are looking for. If your personal brand is incongruent with the types of roles you're applying to, you have to take a step back and do some self-reflection and some introspection around how do you make those two get a little closer. Because at the end of the day, we cannot rely on recruiters or HR or hiring managers to infer our ability to do a job. We have to define our ability for them. We have to compel that reader on that resume, right, beyond the keywords, to envision us in that role. And where you start with that is an expertly defined personal brand. Okay? So once you've defined this, you want to think about you want to start with the end in mind, is essentially what I say. It's essentially that you want to reverse engineer your job search. Okay? You don't want to think about you don't want to be reactive in the sense of, because this is what we're all doing, right? Oh, let me jump online and Google or LinkedIn search or go on Indeed and look for jobs with my job description or my title. First of all, there's a lack of consistency around job titling, right? So you might actually have a set of skills that could play in and benefit an organization in a wide variety of job roles or titles. So the idea is to first step back and craft your ideal employment experience. So again, it's starting with the end in mind. It's not looking at, okay, well, this is what I've done, for 10 years. It's called this in most places. Let me just job search and create a search parameter that gives me, alerts every week. This is about being really intentional. Define your position description. And when I'm talking about define your position description, I'm talking down to both a strategic level, how are you going to impact an organization, right? What's the value add of the position that you're targeting, but also the tactical daily work activities. Also want to think about management structure, right? Do you like a more horizontal or flat organization? Also personality of management, how much autonomy do you need? And then also obviously, very importantly, the organizational culture. All of this stuff plays into what your career experience is going to be every day, and it's no less important in a job search, even if it's a current job search that's been propelled by, a big market disruption like COVID, or just in general long-term planning. You want to identify your position description and the organization characteristics. Once you do that, you're going to define your target market. Your target market is the culmination or the combination of the target industries and organizations that are going to be most likely to have opportunity in the types of roles that you're targeting. So you start, again, with the end in mind. This is what I'm capable of doing. And perhaps you have a primary role, a primary job description, and then maybe the plan B, right? The secondary job description, or a couple of them. Then you identify, research, and document all of your target industries and companies. So again, it's strategic, you're documenting, and you're going to create a schedule around how you're going to target these industries and companies and get in front of the people, the strategic networking component, closest to the jobs at those target companies. Again, I'll say it probably 100 times today. This is proactive versus reactive. So when you identify, research, and document those target industries and companies, and we'll talk more about COVID impact and how that's impacted hospitality in just a little bit, we want to think about maybe hospitality is my target, my primary industry, my target market's primary industry. but what are some of the tangential industries, the connected ones, the related ones, where your skills will transfer? Because now we have to start to get a little more creative, right? Because of what's happened in the market and the lack of openings that was referred to as a challenge most recently by a couple of participants. So you want to prioritize your industry and target market by the viability related to ideal position. Again, if you're not seeing a lot of opportunity in your particular vertical, then we have to kind of take a step back and start to research and identify the industries and organizations that would most benefit and be most likely to have opportunities that your skills can transfer to. So with that, I'm going to pause for a minute to get some feedback, check this chat. Anybody have any questions or just even feedback or thoughts based on what I've just shared?
Hey, Shannon, it's Mandy.
Hi, Mandy. You're my new bestie.
I'm chatty. So,
No worries.
I guess my question is it practical during this time, and maybe this is where you're going, is it practical during this time to be able to create essentially a wish list of what you want out of a position and look for it, even though I feel like right now there's a lot of settling is the wrong word, but second, third choices that we might be ending up taking just because we have to.
Absolutely. Totally hear you. Really good comment. Really good point to make. And I'm going to argue that it's even more important right now to be strategic about this. And for that particular reason, because what you're going to do up front is you're going to identify those second and third possibilities, right? So you're going to already have that idea. So it doesn't feel, so part of this is about gaining some confidence and control and understanding of the market, right? So if you understand that the opportunity isn't in primary in your number one, right? Your preferred, you can have a little more control over defining what that second and third option is. So then it isn't settling, right? Because I think that, information is power, knowledge is power. If we understand where we can plug in, then it's not so much reactive of like, I guess I have to settle for X, Y, Z. It's more like this plan B is right now because of what's happening in the market or what's happening in my industry, but I'm not taking my eye off the ball of what plan A is. But I'll take plan B for 12, 18 months, whatever it takes, but at least that was your plan B and not sort of, reacting to the market condition. Is that fair? Or did I make sense?
Fair to me. Is it fair to the employers that we're taking those positions from when they come?
Wait, say that again. That sounds good. I guess I didn't.
That definitely sounds fair to me as the person that's searching for the job, but is it fair to those employers that we're taking those jobs from and then in 8, 12, maybe 18 months, we leave their positions and move on to something else because, that's what we were supposed to be doing?
Right. I think that's a fair point. What I would ask everyone to really consider is that the employment situation is to some extent a business transaction, right? And you have a responsibility to your career and to your employment situation currently. And if you've added value in that 12 or 18 months, right? If you've contributed and been productive and moved the needle forward and added value to the organization's mission, vision, value, strategy, then that's not lost time. So that's no less impactful, right? So I think one of the things we need to think about in terms of like how we place ourselves at the center of our career experience. So I think that's a really good question. So what I am in no way suggesting is that you take a job that's like your plan B, you settle for something and you like skate, right? But I'm not suggesting that necessarily. But the idea is that even a plan B or C is still strategic from your career experience perspective. And you deserve that, by the way. Yes? No? Maybe?
No, that makes total sense. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Mandy. Sorry. I'm like, Mandy's the only one that has to talk. What is it called? I planted Mandy. She's my plant to ask all the questions. All right, moving on. So we talk personal brands, we talk creating and understanding that market research. And of course, I cannot have a conversation about job searching unless we talk about strategic networking. So early on, there was some feedback from participants around some of the tactics, the resume writing, the keyword, putting the keywords in resumes, and the response from recruiters. I'm gonna argue, I'm gonna suggest, I'm gonna encourage that again, you place yourself at the center of your career experience, that you look at it from a strategic lens, even in the time of COVID, which I know is creating a lot of very understandable stress and uncertainty. But I want you to just remember that this is no less effective than the reactive throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And I'll argue that it's actually a better experience for you because you're not so concerned about the recruiter ghosting, which we can talk about. I was a recruiter for 15 years, so I get it from both sides of the coin. So we can talk about that. But really, at the end of the day, ideal state is that you never are really looking for a job, right? That what you're doing is you're managing your career, you've defined and expertly crafted and communicated your personal brand, and you understand the market within which that you operate professionally, so that opportunities arise for you through the strategic relationships that you have. So I think one of the things that we need to think about is when we talk about networking, I'm not saying going to, which I think is certainly meaningful and helpful at times, but everybody kind of thinks that networking is where you go to the meeting and you get the name tag, right? This could be networking. If I could get more people to talk, that would be awesome. We could network. We could talk about what we're looking for at the end. Ooh, I just had an idea. Let's do that. So any opportunity to engage and activate your current network, right? Again, you have to evaluate who's in your network, who do you need to get in front of that's closest to those target or industries and companies. And that's not always recruiting and HR, folks, right? I think a lot of people want to connect with HR and recruiters, and especially right now, recruiters are really popular. And so you'll hear some feedback and some pushback from recruiters that are saying, I'm getting this influx of candidates and I can't get back to everyone. And that might very well be. But the idea is that you get closest to the person that has that is the person that would hire you for your role. So that means you would be connecting with your peers in the organization, not necessarily HR and recruiting. You're developing relationships with the targeted hiring manager and the people that your would-be peers, and you're adding value. So again, relationships that are strategic, that are reciprocal. So it's, again, how are you showing up in your personal brand when you're networking? On the right side of this slide is just some ideas of how to network. The last statistic I heard, which is certainly one that is pretty dated and not, well, I think it probably, I can't say this with certainty, but I would say that it's probably reflective of what's still going on in the job market, which is 80% of jobs are obtained through networking. They're not obtained through applying online. Will you have to apply for a position online and know how to fill out an application and know how to craft an expertly customized resume? Absolutely. But wouldn't it be great if that was just the perfunctory step that you took after you connected with somebody that wants to consider you for a role? That's where networking comes in, right? So on the right are some opportunities where you can network that you might not be thinking are actually networking, but the idea is that you're building this strategically and for the long term in a way that allows you to understand and stay active in your target market. Because I think what happens for most of us, me included, we get happy in an organization, we get happy in a role, we get happy with our career, and we kind of just head down, right? And we're in our little bubble, our little organizational bubble. And we don't necessarily anticipate or really think about what would it mean to job search. So then it becomes a very reactive and I got to get my resume updated and I got to I got to look online and apply to as much as possible. But what if it were that you weren't ever really job searching, that you were managing your career and that you were managing your personal brand and reputation and you were always surveying the market so that you understood where the opportunity would come in? Again, caveat COVID. How many times can I say that, right? So does anyone have any questions about some of these opportunities? Everybody knows what an informational interview is. a professional association like NHLA is a great opportunity to strategically network. I would hope that anybody that is a member would have looked at the directory. People that aren't members would consider joining, because these are your peers. These are the people that are sort of in the trenches with you. Many probably in, some version of a job search or considering that, right, in this market. So any questions about any of these on the right? Or any actually feedback or ideas or thoughts around strategic networking that you have experienced that have been positive and productive that you can share with the group? Mandy? Just kidding. I'm just kidding. No one's having any success with networking? Is that what I'm hearing? It's hard out there right now.
It's Mandy.
Thanks. Hi, Mandy.
Hey. So I feel like what's coming at us right now isn't necessarily networking as much as it's information, it's webinars, it's knowledge, which is exceptional. But I don't feel like these platforms are allowing us this kind of opportunity where it's a smaller group and you have a back and forth. It's more of, here's 45 minutes, here's our knowledge, 5 seconds for questions, and you're out. You don't get you don't get this one-on-one right now.
Right. Well, I think part of it might be because people are having some challenge around getting people to engage on these platforms, as evidenced by what's happening in our meeting. So I think that's probably a little bit of challenge. But I would tell you, Mandy, if you're going to be strategic about that, when you join those, try to get a participant list. And if you can't get a participant list, then when you hear the people that talk that really resonate with you and like, man, I want to talk to them, then you find a way to connect with them. So that's the value of the webinars, is like who's participating, who's engaging, who has great ideas, and then who do I need to connect with on the side, right, to start to develop that long-term reciprocal relationship. That's where the value is, right?
Right on. Okay.
Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Yeah. I love that. Mentees and mentors. I started this myself, right? I've become a I always get them wrong. I'm the mentor and I'm a mentee, right? There's so much value in that, not just from a professional development perspective, but also what are the ideas that are happening, that are exchanging, right? You learn about people's activity. There's so much stuff that's not happening. I think we think everything's happening like on social media, right? There's so much stuff happening outside in like real life. Even in, again, caveat COVID, and so it's a little slower right now, but people are having conversations and making connections that can give you ideas or make connections, right? So I think having those conversations and participating in things we wouldn't think are part of a job search. Like, I'm not going to be a mentor right now, I'm looking for a job, right? But that's the point, is one, you're continuing to add value, you're maintaining that confidence, and you're also getting ideas, that idea exchange and flow. Love the webinars, connecting with people, the presenters as well. That's spot on. And somebody talked about their alumni association. I think that's a really great. Place. And I think I had that on here. Oh, and I took it off for informational interviews. I had alma mater, but that's the same thing, right? The alumni association. These are all people that have had similar experiences. These are people that are going to be in your bubble as you think about where is the opportunity. So I love that. So I want to talk about how this looks from a tactical perspective in terms of when you're looking for jobs. Because one of the things that was mentioned was, I think it was my old bestie, Mandy, resume being filtered out, right, because of keywords. There's a lot of controversy around this, controversy. I mean, in my geeky world of recruiting and career coaching, there's a lot of controversy over whether or not the ATS is actually rejecting candidates on its own. My understanding is that it's like the ATS hasn't taken over the world, and it's like it's not iRobot, right? And it's just like rejecting people. I think there's such a complexity factors that are going into the idea of the ATS. The ATS is just, applicant tracking system is just the name for the entire industry. And so one of the things we need to remember is that every company might use a different one, and every company might have different parameters. So there's no way that you're ever going to completely, what's the word I'm looking for? You're not going to ace an ATS exam, right? You're never going to get it perfect every time you apply to a resume or apply with your resume online, unless you know exactly which ATS they use, how they configured it on the back end, right? So what I encourage my clients to do is make sure that you are customizing your resume and your application as closely and specifically to that role as possible. And so I think about when you're positioning for new roles and you're thinking about submitting your resume, we've already talked about number one, which is you're going to have defined your target role. So this job description I'm about to show you as an example, we're going to assume is part of your target role, okay? You are in charge of making the connection for the reader within 7, 8, 10 seconds, right? First pass of a resume, that's about as much time people spend on that first look. You're in charge of making that connection and compelling that reader to want to learn more about you, okay? So you want to connect your skills and experience to the role requirements immediately. And the way you do that is you leverage the language of the target organization. It's in the job description. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to show you a job description, and then I'm going to show you how you might target a resume to this job description. Let me check this chat. Oh, okay. Thank you, V8. We're going to get back to this about the recommendations for career planning, and maybe you'll want to share some more if you're in a position to chat. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. So I've created a PDF off of an online job ad, so forgive the formatting, but hopefully Anthony will confirm he can see this because he's the face I can see. Oh, okay, awesome, thanks. Okay, so this is an operations manager, Homewood Suites, Hilton, here in Las Vegas that I found online. So forgive this because that's just because of the way that it printed. I want to talk to you about job descriptions. Everything you need to know about customizing your resume to ensure, to create less likelihood that you are rejected from an ATS based on job fit. I cannot speak to whether or not you're rejected for a myriad of other reasons, being they've already identified candidates, they've received too many applications, so they've done a cutoff, right? I'm going to talk to you about how do you make that connection between your skills and experience and the role requirements as most compelling as possible on your resume. And it's right here, okay? So there's always a summary on a job description. There's always some form of essential job functions or duties. And there's, this one's great because they're tying this to the competency. And then this one gets really specific, right? But I think what I want you to focus on is what you're going to be doing, and keep this in mind. When I teach resume writing, I always start with this. A well-written resume is not your job description, right? So we all know that. So you're not actually going to write, oh, I've done this, right? I've done, resolution and guest complaints and employee issues, right? So I'm just going to, copy and paste this and, because I've done this, right? We're not going to do that. This is what you're going to do. Your resume is to communicate how you've been successful at doing that. What was the impact or the value add because you did that function? Okay? So the language is in here. So then it's about how do you quantify and qualify your results and your impact to an organization based on this bullet. Questions there before I move on? Just making sure I'm being clear. Nothing yet, I don't think. Okay, feel free to just jump in if you have a question. So you're not gonna, so I literally have seen this on a resume before. Let's see if you guys can see where I'm highlighting. I've actually seen that on a resume. That's not impactful, right? That doesn't compel the reader to understand the connection between your skills and experience. This is essentially a job description. You use this language to convert your skills and experience that you know can add value in this role, and that's what your bullet should say in your resume. So you can use this language, assign duties to employers and subordinates, and observes performance to ensure adherence to hotel and franchise policy and established operating procedures. I want to know, have you made an impact, right? I want to know, how have you demonstrated that you've ensured adherence to SOPs? So this is about your accomplishments. Every bullet statement is accomplishment, provides training, including safety training and SOPs. So what kind of training, how many trainings, what was the response to the training, did safety increase, right? So that's one way to ensure that you're not being rejected based on your fit for the role. So again, we don't want HR recruiters to have to infer, because you cut and paste your job description that might use different language than this, but you're like, oh, I've done this. Of course I've done this, but we call it something different. Well, you're going to use the language in the target role, not the language at your organization, right? But with the caveat and the distinction that we are not copying and just pasting bullet points from a job posting, because that's essentially just the job description. It's what you did with having that duty that the recruiter and hiring manager cares about. You want to create the vision of you being able to handle and make an impact and be successful in this role. Questions? Comments? Comments? All right. All right.
Oh, I'm going to volunteer myself because I have been quiet.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah. So just to echo what you say, like if you go up saying like handling guest service issues, when you say changing it to quantify and qualify it, meaning like as a result of handling these guest complaints and issues, your previous position, you scored like an above average overall property score, and somehow put that in the resume rather than just saying you handle these issues.
Absolutely. So anytime you can quantify a result, I think I need you to mute because I hear feedback on Anthony. I'm sorry. And I'm just worried other people. I'm like, be quiet, it's my turn. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so anytime you can quantify it, right? So if you can talk about guest survey, response, getting more response, driving the participation, driving down complaints, or even from the employee perspective, right? How have you improved or added value to employee productivity or employee satisfaction and engagement? And if you can quantify it, great. You can't quantify everything, understandable. But how have you added impact? Like, how does it make your boss's job easier, right? Because you're in your role handling these things that are directly related to the job duties and functions that are listed in this job posting. Good question, Anthony. Did I get that right? Does that make sense? I got a thumbs up. So at the end of the day, guys, I think I want to stress that I want to go back to the fact that so much of what we talk about is in job searching is tactical. And again, tactics are really important. But if you don't have the overarching strategy first, the tactics don't matter as much and they don't give you the sense of control, confidence, and productivity that you need to sustain a long-term job search. And, part of the challenge right now is the market conditions of COVID, right? And how long things are taking, the lack of opportunity. So those are things that are outside of your control. You cannot control the market conditions. What you can control is understanding fully and specifically how how you can plug into an organization, you can control defining what that target job description looks like, and perhaps you have primary and secondary like Plan A, Plan B, top priority, and a couple of others. And you can control how you're going to strategically build relationships and networks with the people that can get you closest to the job. It actually feels better to do that work, and the more that you engage with others, you can maintain a sense of, I still have my hand on the pulse. I always get these sayings wrong. Hand on the pulse, my understanding of what's going on in my market, even if I'm not working right now, because you have clearly defined your strategy around the types of roles you're targeting. You've clearly defined your target market, and now you're strategically networking around those two things. So one of the things that I also talk a lot about is maintaining momentum, because it's tough out there. So I want you to think in terms of what can you do, strategies to essentially manage expectations, try to manage burnout, try to manage stress related to job searches. And one of the things that I think is really important is around scheduling your job search activity. I don't think anybody should be spending 8 hours a day looking for work. I think that there is a max number of hours, and everyone is probably going to be a little different, but there's a max amount of time that you can productively contribute your brain power and energy investment in job searching. So you should work to figure out what that time frame is and schedule that into your day and your week. And then once that time is expired and you've conducted the activities that you've planned, you're done for the day in that. That'll maintain a sense of, again, this feeling, like prevent a little bit of that burnout or stress. So more is not always more in this case. And then you can track your job search activity. With my clients, I typically provide a very straightforward spreadsheet that has the target industries, target orgs, and then the target contacts at those organizations, and then also a tracking of all networking activity and the result and the follow-up. So Excel works great for those of us that are old school and straightforward. There's also some technology you might want to leverage. So there's something called Hunter, H-U-N-T-R, no E. I've not used it directly, but you can look at it. So I'm not endorsing it, but you can look at it to see if it's something that would work for you. It actually it's a scraper that'll collect automatically all of your job search activity into your own. It's a platform for that. So you'll have an account, and it's all of your job search activity. That might work for those of you that are more technologically advanced than me. There's also, you've heard of for the resume writing tools. There's something called jobscan.co. Helps you with, here's the job description, here's your resume, how's that connection looking? So there are platforms out there. Again, I haven't directly used that one, but there are platforms out there that'll technology you can leverage that'll help to ensure that you are creating a resume that's speaking to that target job description. Other ways to minimize stress and burnout during a job search is document your wins. A win is a phone screen, right? Because that's a conversation to learn and to practice your pitch for your personal brand and how you can add value in a role. So if you get a phone screen from HR, recruiting, if you if you have an informational interview with somebody and you learn you get a lead, right? Or you help someone else with a lead, that's a win, and you should be documenting those to show so that you can remind yourself of the effort and the production that you are creating out of your job search. And then also leverage your trusted advisors. Everyone needs to have their circle, right? The people that you can go to talk, communicate, vent, get help and support, and just listen. So if you don't have a defined set of people, it could be 2 people, it could be 8 people, it's whatever works for you. I highly encourage you to really focus on who are your people, who are your trusted advisors you can go to, and for what, so that you make sure that you have the continued support as you continue to try to navigate a job search, especially in these tough market conditions. All right, that wraps me up today. I like to always end if anybody else is on the computer here with my two Dobies. These are my rescue Dobies, Zane and Deacon. They always make me smile, so I figure they make others smile. So any last minute comments, questions? This is where you can reach me if you have additional questions, Shannon at audacitycareers.com.